Ohio and Michigan hunter. I've been an avid outdoorsman since I was like 2 years old. My dad used to take me up to northern Michigan with him and take me out on some Abitibi paper grounds way back in the day. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell, man.
Awesome. Great introduction. So we're going to dive right into it here. Are we going to be breaking down this piece here, Grant? Just this piece?
So I'd like to probably break down two pieces if we can. As I was mentioning, I'm a Michigan and Ohio hunter. This is my Ohio piece right here. I just purchased this with my fiance. It's only 13 acres. It's a small piece of land. I was never a fan of hunting small pieces of land until I got this piece and kind of realized what was around it. If I zoom out here, you can see there's a lot of woods here, and you can see that directly behind my property. There's what looks like used to be cattle trails and a bunch of maybe cut down ground. What they did back there was they logged that property about 6 years before I owned this. So every tree back there on that 200 and how many acres it is, 206 acres is basically anything from a 6 foot to a 12-foot young tree.
Nice.
Perfect habitat for deer and turkey. I mean, the wildlife that we see come out of there is great. That piece of property makes my 13 acres really, really nice, mainly because my neighbor owns 18 acres across the road and doesn't hunt. So we have an 18-acre sanctuary over here, a riparian corridor, which this is showing a plowed field. I've dressed this up a lot since we bought the piece. What I'm trying to do is pull movement on deer from here and from this field to funnel back into this large area by using my property. The way I'm trying to do that is by increasing water sources. There's a pond here, and there's a pond here behind my house, and increasing food and cover sources so they have an easy way to get from this property or this property to this woods, but they have to cut through my food plot. So they're going to have to expose themselves at some point to get through that woods, unless, of course, they completely route around my property, which is hopefully that won't happen with the trail cameras and things that I've got going right now. It seems that the patterns are built to come from here to here because there are homes down on this side and there's homes down on this side. So it, like I was saying, it's kind of a unique situation. We put a lot of pasture out in this field for horses. I was always kind of under the impression that maybe horses would scare white-tailed deer away. From what I can see, it's actually having the opposite effect. So we've got a mare and we've got I'm not good with horses, a male horse. Gelding, I think he's called. And that mare, when she gets all fired up, I don't know if it's the pheromones from the urine or what, but it's almost like she attracts deer in because they're like stopping at the edge of that pasture to say like, hey, what's up? You know, you're a big animal. So that's been interesting to kind of play around that as well, which is why I further want to beef up this area of this property and just make that a sanctuary we never go into unless we're pulling deer out. I do have permission to access the land around if I need to pull deer out. My neighbors have been very nice about that, but that's kind of the long and short of this piece of property. There's really one advantage I like about this is there's not really a lot of spots to hunt. So you don't have that argument in your head of, am I going to go sit the food plot or am I going to go sit the swamp? It's, hey, you got 3 spots. Which way's the wind moving?
Right.
And that's
exactly
about it. So that's that piece. I don't know if you want to cover that first, and then we can move on to that a 40 that I hunt, or I don't know how you want to structure it. But
yeah, no, we'll start on this piece, and then we'll break this piece down, and then we'll move on to that next 40. I have a couple questions. So if you look at my screen here, does this piece of property get hunted? Do you know of?
So I can't see your screen, but if you tell me north, south, east, or west, I can tell you.
To your right, to the east.
Okay. So that piece, There's a gentleman that owns that who's a farmer. Great guy. He rents the piece out to hunt to an older gentleman. Um, he has access to that piece from a dead end road that comes back in this way.
Mm-hmm.
He usually only accesses his piece from that road, and I've only seen that hunter back here 3 times, and it's all been during turkey season. One thing that I've kind of found of Southern Ohio, and I hesitate to say this, Southeastern Ohio, I should say, is there's not a lot of deer hunters here, in my opinion.
Really?
Growing Michigan on that
Okay.
public land, it is. I mean, it's saturated.
Mm-hmm.
I can season here and see 3 dudes. I mean, that just blows my mind. So if you're looking for good state land, Southeast Ohio, it might be a good option for you. But so to answer your question, Torin, sorry, long answer, made short. Nobody really hunts that except for a few handfuls of times a year. I have had to recover a deer from that woods. It's a nice stand, good oaks, good timbers, some small food sources, but that's about it.
Okay. And then you said the Allen Lyons land is a sanctuary and doesn't get hunted.
Correct.
All right.
He's an older gentleman, lives there with his wife, and yeah, they don't hunt. So
what about the northwest, the William property up there?
yeah, so that one, I think that there are hunters that hit that property, but I don't believe that they hit from my side. I have not seen hunters out in this field or in that woods. That doesn't mean that they're not there. It just means that I can't see them from my road. So that property could be getting pressured, and there's probably more pressure coming from this north side here, up in this area.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Like, just to be able to get access to that property, you got a road here, and then here's your timber. So like the northwest side of the property has timber, and then the southeast side. Well, if there's any deer in that southeast side, they gotta come. They gotta come from a direction that they have to have perfect wind not to bump deer out of there. And you're set up awesome for escape routes. So in breaking down and critically thinking about a property, I would really look at your setup kind of as an escape route to get to that large track over there where you said you had all that early successional growth. You know what I mean? And
yeah, I've never thought about it that way. Yeah.
There's probably a good chance that they may be bedding in there. I can almost guarantee that it's going to be a phenomenal rut spot. And once that kicks up, you're going to have deer that are going to be pushing in and out of that through these woodlots. But if they're getting pressure, I mean, you might be really, really sitting in the money there.
Yeah, I see that is an excellent point, Torin. That's something I've never thought about, and that kind of almost explains something I saw last year. My fiance is the horsewoman, and she was out riding one afternoon, middle of the rut. I believe it was mid to late October, and just kicked an 8-point buck. Never had him on camera, never had him anywhere, but I know that they will deer drive these fields across the road with dogs every now and then. Or maybe they're not, driving dogs, but they run coon dogs over there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that buck, we had never seen him on camera before. She kicked him up midday. It was like 12:30. And I mean, deer on my small piece, they don't really sit there,
Mm-hmm.
They're not really heading down there. So that really kind of makes sense for why that deer could have been there. He could have been pushed from that property, and that's kind of filling in some holes for me.
Yep, absolutely. So can you draw out where your horse pasture is on your map?
Oh, absolutely.
And then we'll kind of just see what we're working with here.
Probably about there.
So that area is completely going to be fenced off now, right?
Oh, dang it. I just deleted it. Okay, there we go. Yep. So we're going to fence that off with just electrical tape. So deer can move in and out of there.
Oh, okay.
But they're just going to have to traverse a tape. We also have a small sacrifice lot over here as well. Kind of runs like this.
Okay.
Which we have had deer tracks in. So it kind of cuts off. This is what I'm worried about, and this is going to be a test year for me because I just got done pounding in all these T-posts. You probably noticed how buff I am, from doing that. But I'm just kidding. But this is going to be an interesting year for me because this area, there's about 2 acres here that between the road and where we put that pasture.
Mm-hmm.
I planted an apple orchard in here, in between that acre of woods and this pasture. So I'm excited. I'm trying to put as many trees as I can in there without, breaking out carrying capacity. But if I turn on my topo here, you can kind of see how this field falls into this creek.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of creates like natural fertilization for these trees. So I'm hoping that will end up being. I'm hoping this whole area will end up being a lush 2 acres of food and cover for white-tailed deer, with the intention of this area with the pond kind of being strictly sanctuary, never go in, kind of an area.
Okay. All right. So, are you pretty good at identifying trees as far as like species, what it is?
Absolutely, I'm kind of obsessed with it.
Okay, nice. So, what kind of tree species do you have on your property?
So unfortunately, we had a lot of ash, so a lot of that's died off. We took, I think, out of just that small 1 acre out there, I think we took 18 ash trees out of it this year.
Wow.
This area is pretty prominent for maples. We got a lot of good maple growth. And the back corner of the property right here, this large tree on this small side, that's actually an oak tree that is the biggest oak tree I've ever seen in my entire life.
Do you know what kind of oak it is?
Pardon me?
Do you know what kind of oak it is? Red,
I
white?
believe it's a red oak.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Sorry. Oh, actually, no. Hold up one sec. I want to ask you, what kind of maples are there? Are they red maples, sugar maples?
There's red maples, sugar maples. There's just a couple of golden maples. There's a good variety of maples around here.
Okay.
Good amount of cedars as well. A lot of sassafras. We do have some hickory that'll drop, and then I want to say there's also beech out there that we found. Will drop beech nuts.
Do you have any soft mass, like cherries, choke cherries, pin cherries? Nothing like that.
I really don't.
Okay.
We have old apple trees behind the house, but that's really about it. Nothing. There was a lot of juniper along this creek that I removed to make room for the orchard,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're trying to build a blueberry patch back here,
Nice.
Outside of this oak canopy.
Okay. For your apple orchard, I assume they're not going to fruit probably for a couple years.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So for the is your old apple orchard fruiting, or are they dead?
It is. It's
Okay.
a fruit and crabapple orchard. Yeah.
Okay. So the reason that I'm bringing this up is to look at what potentially food that you're lacking as far as mass. So you have some crab apples as far as soft mass, and that's really about it until your other apple trees start fruiting. Potentially when you get your blueberry patch set up, they might be in there if you fence it off. You have that one section of oaks, is that correct? That real large one, and that's about it?
There's one giant oak here. There's one giant oak in my front yard, which pulls deer in, which is kind of nice. And then there's about 3 or 4 white oak over here in this little 1 acre
Okay.
wood.
Um, let's see, deal plans. Just taking some notes here.
Absolutely, same here. Yeah, that's there's a lot of beech nut and like what I call there's a lot of beech nut. There's oak in here. There's a lot of cedar in these lines, but there's a lot of soft trees, what I call soft trees, like your elms, which I know is technically a hardwood, but I don't consider it one. But
Mm-hmm.
um, sassafras, things like that, that are just that make this nice in the winter. But I'm sorry, in the spring and the summer. But in the winter, all the leaves fall off. It's not a nice area, but that's where I'm trying to grow. We're trying to grow hemp and all kinds of things in there.
Okay. Where is your food plot going to be located, and what are you planning with it?
So I'll show you what I got going on right now. It's kind of a interesting setup. So I'll do food plots in blue. Um, so we have a food plot here. That's a good mix of things. Brassicas, clovers, radishes. I kind of just did like a bunch of row test plots this year to figure out what's going to grow best by this,
Mm-hmm.
because it kind of gets more shade. Um, and then what I'm trying to do is build an area of hemp here that goes all along the sides of this and kind of angles into my food plot up here. It's going to be hemp, sorghum. I planted a bunch of Austrian peas in there as well to create a runway. Um, and then we have a big food plot back here. This is chock full of everything. I got radishes up in this corner. We've got Austrian peas back in this corner. Just everything you can think of. Trying to get a good variety of things in there. Also, we have a lot of clay here, so I'm trying to loosen up the ground a little bit. If I can get some of those radishes, I might plant sugar beets one of these years. And then I'm doing another runway. Sorry, I made that food plot red. Then I'm doing another runway here of hemp and sorghum, to kind of, this is what I was talking about with creating that corridor that they can use to get back to this woods.
Mm-hmm.
I like to put a stand up in this corner. I have a blind here, and then we have a clover plot right here at the end of this little area. And then we have another food plot. I'm really packing it in, this 13 acres. And then we have another food plot kind of right here, almost underneath that oak that's right next to the blueberry patch. We got about 6 blueberries in there right now. We actually put blueberries off this year. I was kind of happy.
Nice. What is that upper food plot in the north there, up by the oak?
So I planted no-till in there last year, so it's a lot of ryegrass and clover. On the backside, I tore it all up and I planted a bunch of chicory and clover. So it's a mix of chicory, 3 different types of clover. I think it's like red clover, white clover, and something else. And then the ryegrass. That's probably my most popular plot this time of year, just because there's so much there for the deer to hit with acorns and everything.
What is in the middle section there between the horse pasture and the rest of your food plot? Yeah, in there.
So this I'm kind of letting grow up. I'm gonna plant a lot of I want to plant a lot of pines and maybe trees that are going to give me some food source, chestnuts, things like that, all in here dotted. But I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to do that yet. I want to put my blind close to the pasture so that movement can maybe be hidden with the horse movement sometimes. But my plan is to let this all grow up, kind of get wild. I have a line of white pines planted all on here. And I want to just kind of basically raise it up to be as wild as it can be with as much bedding opportunities for turkey and deer, any kind of animals that you can imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that. If you fill that little section in and let that grow up, you get some white pines in there, or whatever other pine you're looking to plant. that's going to be great cover and great staging for not only your food, but transitioning from all those other areas that you have around you. So they may go onto your property, hang in there at low light, say in the morning or in the evening, before they go back to their bedding area or before they go to food, whatever. So that's great. That's great that you're doing that.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. That's good. That kind of confirms. I was a little unsure what to do with that area, but I was just thinking, I'm like, we got to make this as wild as possible, and that's kind of my goal with that. So
Yeah,
yeah, thank you for that.
that'll be nice. Moving on to the next step. I know we discussed a little bit about the soft mass. What else do you think might be lacking from your property?
So cover right now is definitely lacking. Like I said, I let pretty much this whole field grow up last year, trying to kind of get it ready for pasture and whatnot, which that worked out really well. We saw good deer. Actually, I took that buck last year.
Nice.
So it was a really good learning year, but I would say cover is my biggest thing right now, which I'm not really hung up on it because of what's behind me and what's across from me. Like my 40 acres in Michigan, I want to set that up differently. I want to hold deer in that swamp, but here I just want to get them moving through, like you were saying, in those before feeding area times, and those, I want them to be on my property, not just when they're going to feed, but just a little longer before that. That's kind of why I pulled everything back away from the edges of the property. One, because I don't want to be tracking deer on my neighbor's property all the time. But two, because those deer have to then come out of those woods. I mean, you guys have said it before, and I've heard you say it. Don't hunt over the food spot all the time, because the deer will wait until it's dark to go get that food, right? It's out in the open.
Right.
So hunt those transition areas. So how do I make those transition areas here? That's what I'm kind of trying to do, is make transition areas that they can use to go from comfort to food, and feel comfortable until, yeah.
I totally agree. I think you're on the right track. Probably your biggest thing that you're lacking, that I can see, is cover. And
Yeah.
you're off to a great start with planting that middle area and letting that grow up and turn into warm season grasses, CRP, that kind of stuff. Letting that get a little gnarly in there so that they feel comfortable being out there in daylight hours.
Okay.
We addressed the soft mass stuff. It sounds like you're going to potentially be going that direction. I mean, you already planted quite a few apple trees in there, so you're going to get that taken care of. As far as hard mass, you got a pretty sweet setup in that you got a little bit of everything as far as species of trees. So you got red oaks, you got white oaks, you got hickory, you got beech. So at some point throughout the year, you're always going to have hard mass on your property. It's just a matter of sectioning it off and knowing where that is. So where your pin is, I'm assuming there's a creek in there, right?
Yeah, so that's a big swale swamp.
Mhm.
It's probably maybe 50 yards wide, and then that trails all the way back to the back of this property, and I let that grow as wild as I can, man.
Nice.
We've planted a bunch of annual and perennial flowers in there, just kind of taken after. I don't know if you followed the Meat Eater Back 40 episodes or whatnot. I took a lot of advice from those guys when they were saying, build a property for every type of critter that you can imagine, and that's kind of what I'm going for. It also helps when my neighbors raise bees and they see we got all these flowers. They bring over free honey. That's nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's real cool, actually. Have you noticed that these oaks produce when your red oak up here in the corner does not?
So I need to do more investigating on those. To be honest, I haven't really dug into that side of the property as much as I want to yet. Really focused on getting this orchard in this year. I need to go in. I need to assess the health of these oaks up in here. I need to. This oak in my front yard has never thrown an acorn since I've owned this place.
Really?
So I don't really know what's going on with that tree. I don't know if it's lacking nutrients or what needs to happen with that. It's beautiful oak. I mean, it's got to be close to 100 years old, but yeah, it's just not throwing acorns. Either it's not or it is, and they're getting gobbled up so fast that I'm not noticing even husks, which would be rare. So I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but
It could also be a male too.
true.
A lot of people don't realize that there's male and female trees, kind of. But anyway, that's a whole nother tangent and rabbit hole to go down. So
Absolutely. Plant your chestnut trees in too.
yep. Um, so I would definitely recommend checking out those white oaks and
Absolutely.
finding out when they're going to drop and how much they're going to drop. That's going to be huge as far as pulling deer potentially straight across your property. So if they're going to walk the line of basically the plowed field there, you know what I'm talking about, the transition there?
Absolutely, yeah.
If they're going to go that direction, or if they're going to hook all the way down to the southeast portion of your property and come across, go there, feed there before they feed out into all that other ag.
Right.
So you're looking at this area as a potential staging area when the reds and whites are alternating.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's great advice. That's definitely a part of my game I need to polish for sure. And yeah, I'm gonna make notes about that right now.
Have you hunted that section? Do you hunt that section? How do you operate in there?
So I do have a tree stand at the corner of this blue box here,
Mm-hmm.
over that food plot. That's where I shot that buck. I believe that deer was actually bedding over here in my neighbor's property, Ellen Lyons, and then coming over every year or every morning and crossing over here to feed and then get to this woods.
Mm-hmm.
I found tracks of that deer. He crossed here, came up into our property, and then made the walk right to my tree stand, and then I shot him at 15 yards. So,
What is this road like? Is this
it's not busy. I mean, it's busy during transition times. What I mean by that is like work hours when people are going to and coming from work. Apart from that, it's pretty quiet. I hike every morning 3-4 miles between 5 and 6 a.m. and there's always deer on that road. Always. Yeah. In fact, yesterday morning I went out there, or sorry, yesterday afternoon I went out there for a run, and like 5:30 in the afternoon, there's a doe sitting right here on the road about to feed down into that property. Which now I just got that question in the back of my head: is there acorns right there? She might have been going down to eat.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And I mean, where you have that other stand, I would have said 100% throw a stand in there. That's like a great pinch point for when that south fence line, that south tree line, when that has cover. I mean, they're going to take that and go to that large tract of timber to your east, and then potentially over into the early successional timber that's over there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's kind of a spot that I really, that's why I have the ground blind out here in the middle of this field. Now, I'm a guy that I like to hunt. I like to be in the field. I like to be in that solitude out there in nature. And I don't want to overkill a spot with my scent, with tracks going in and out. So I probably only hunted this stand 3 times before I shot that deer, just because I had him on camera coming in, so I knew it was the time, kind of a thing. So, yeah, uber important.
Dude, that's huge, man, and that's awesome to hear that you're hunting your property smart and not over hunting it and putting too much pressure on it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's tough with the smaller piece, but I mean, also with the smaller piece, like I've had to get away from like worrying about scent and worrying about letting dogs out and dogs barking and running, because I feel these deer are going to get used to that.
100%.
And as they grow and get more used to that, we just need to go about business as normal.
Totally agree.
There was a time last year when, I would wait for my fiance to go out and ride her horses, and then I'd sneak out to my stand thinking them deer are watching those horses. They're not going to be looking for me going out to the stand. Did that help me or not? I don't know. But I'll use any tactic I can.
Dude, that's definitely a potential. Absolutely. I mean, you see some of the urban bow hunting stuff where like guys go out when the kids are out playing, they sneak in, get in the stand when the kids go inside to eat dinner. That's when all the deer come out in the backyards and feed on the grass. So there's
It's
definitely something
amazing.
to it, man. There's definitely something to
Absolutely.
it. They're
And
not
then I
dumb
mean,
animals.
there's guys you hear, they go to state land and hunt the parking lots because them
Yep.
bucks just sit by the parking lot. Like it's crazy. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That's funny because I actually have a podcast coming up here on something like that. I know a guy that does that.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't really sound like you're really doing anything wrong on this piece. The other place that like it looks pretty easy to hunt based on your wind. It's set up relatively in a square, so you can hunt almost anywhere on this property with the proper wind direction. You pay a lot of attention to wind.
I do. And one thing I've noticed is when it gets into the evening here and starts to cool off, the wind will change and it'll start blowing south towards about 7 miles south of here, maybe 10 is the Ohio River.
Mm-hmm.
Cool it off in the evening, it'll start sucking that that wind back. So I got to be careful about hunting this stand. I'll hunt this in the morning. Wind will be blowing this way, and in the evening it'll move this way. Which, again, it's hit or miss as if those deer are going to be coming in to this field or this field. With the pasture, that's probably going to help me. Funny story about when I shot that buck, the buck above me actually. There was no wind that morning, and I was not going to hunt that stand. But something told me, dude, go to that stand and just get out there as fast as you can. So I did. Didn't bring any of my gear. Didn't bring scent cover. Nothing. Got into that stand, and then I just heard that deer coming across that field, and I was like, "There's no way that's the deer." Came in, and I could just feel the wind starting to change, and I was like, "Now's the time, man!" And I let an arrow fly. It was a forward-facing shot, which I normally would never do, but just a scenario where it kind of worked out in my favor with that wind changing as the sun was coming up. So. Yeah, I definitely pay attention to it, but sometimes it's just not in your favor, man, no matter what you do.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's very true. What are your sits like up in that oak tree, that red oak up in the top right?
So
And what's the deer activity like up there?
I put a ground blind there last year. I won't gun hunt out of there because it's too close to houses, but I will bow hunt over there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of activity there. You see a lot of does. You see a lot of young bucks coming through, browsing that area. I got some mineral licks in there and stuff too that a lot of these young bucks love to hit right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time I ever hunted that area, I was hunting with the ground blind. 5 minutes in, I saw a young buck. I could see deer there almost every single sit, but that spot's really temperamental because if you notice, there's a lane.
Yep.
That goes back along that property.
Yep.
Goes into that big piece. So my neighbors will drive that lane right before dark and in the morning as soon as the sun comes up. So I've kind of used this as just a observation plot. What kind of deer are on my property? Which way they move in? Then that'll kind of help me to set up cameras in different locations so I can see how they're using my property. Are they just coming along the back, or are they coming up into the middle? Kind of the thing.
It's smart.
Never hunt this area, but I think I'll probably I don't even know if I want to throw a stand in there. I might throw a stand in there that my neighbors can't see because I feel like last year it kind of hurt me. They saw that ground blind, so they started coming through at odd times just to I don't know. That could be my own mind, right? Maybe I'm just a paranoid hunter, but
where your pointer's at, and you have like that sliver of trees there.
Yep.
How far is it from? Well, I guess I could just draw it. Let's see how far that is. So about 150 feet across there. Do you see them ever cut that corner there? And then do they travel like the east side of your property there and just take that down?
They do. This is where I've kind of been proud of myself for food plots. They'll do exactly what you just said, and they feed from the back of these properties over here because they're kind of thick as well.
Mm-hmm.
They'll do that and they'll just hang along back in here. But since I've been growing these food plots, they've started to feed back into the middle of my field.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel comfortable there. And that's where I've just I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years ago, I really got heavy into food plots. And I'll tell you what, man, having that food source there, it's going to make a complete game changer on my property for pulling deer in.
Oh, I totally agree. And
It's just,
as that thicker stuff grows up, it's going to be even more because they're going to feel a lot more comfortable and safe in in that food. So
yep,
like you could turn that since if you want to get away from that road a little bit, uh, you could turn that into your stand there, and they'll absolutely cut that corner. And especially as the years go by and that grows up and that grows up, that would be a moneymaker there. Sneak right out of the house,
yep.
south south or any type of east wind, and you're good.
Tried to do that before with does and sneak up on them over there. There's just not quite enough cover right now. I
Mm-hmm.
tried to do that last year with the doe, but I planted a bunch of arborvitaes and white pines and all kinds of good cover things in here that I'm hoping in 5 years will just give me another little break here, an edge that those deer will start using to come
Yep.
into this field. Because I mean, there's a decent amount of space here between here and that lane. There's deer tracks over there, but with the house here, I don't know if I want to invite deer up in this way. But again, with it being a small piece, maybe I do, and I want them to get used to me. It's
Yep.
one of those things I'm going to have to just kind of learn as I go, but that's the fun of it. So
Oh, absolutely. And you can judge that too based off of like what the deer are doing out there. Maybe go out
yep.
there and just plant like a little 10 foot by 10 foot section there and see how they react to that and see how they deal with your kind of pressure and that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, I thought about because there's a creek that runs up in the front here,
Hmm.
and it off my corner gives us a little island over here. I thought about just putting a little food plot in there. I put some uh, blue spruce all in this corner.
Hmm.
Putting a little food plot in there and just seeing, man, if they're going to be feeding over there and
Yeah,
how interesting it is.
experimenting.
That's a
Absolutely.
good idea.
Uh, that's pretty much it as far as the questions I have for you. You're hunting it properly. You're not hunting it too much. Um, you got the right. You got pretty much almost everything you need. You're just lacking a little bit of cover, and you're taking care of that. Uh, and you realize what they're using your property for. So, if you want to move on, if you're ready to move on to
Yeah,
that other piece, we can have a look at that.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, my biggest thing on this would be just if you see a small piece, man, you don't have much money, buy it, dude. If it's got all this stuff around it, do not be
Exactly.
afraid of a small piece. I was always afraid of a small piece, and it's worked out for me so far. So hopefully, I've got more photos I can show you guys next year of 160s or something. All right, so now we go up here, southern Michigan. Hunt around a little lake here. That's from when I was shed hunting. Oh, you know what? I don't have my Michigan layer, man.
Oh, okay.
But I can draw where this is. All right, this rectangle right here is my family's 40. Um, we got a cabin out on this little lake. Um, kind of a nice setup, but this is where my dad shot a 135 11 point 2 years ago. I've taken all these bucks on that property. Those were all deer. I mean, barely probably broke 100 inches, but I mean, I was, maybe 15, 16, 17 when I took those bucks. This is a great area for hunting. High pressure. It's just north of the Ohio border. This is Ohio right down here. Kitty corner to this piece is a Boy Scouts camp, which is 2 blocks, 2 sections. I forget what a section equals out to. Is a section 120 acres? Whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good cover over here with the conflicting seasons. You get rifle season in Michigan, deer run to Ohio, rifle season in Ohio, deer run to Michigan. It's interesting. We get deer on this property that we've never seen before in the late rut. We shot a really nice 8-point there, scored about 127. He actually shed its antlers when we got hit. Never saw that deer, and it just popped up one day during the rut. So it's a great piece for that. Let me delete these track lines so we can get a little clearer. Okay. We got a lot of contours to this land as well. Our barn sits right here, and then we have a trail that kind of feeds back into here and then feeds back through this whole property. We have a giant food plot here. Let's say it's probably here. No, that's not right. It's a little bit harder to discuss property that's not completely plowed off, huh?
Yeah, when there's a little bit more timber on it, it makes it a little tougher.
Right. All right. So there's a giant food plot here. That's really our only food plot that we put time and energy into. I hunt this property with 2 other folks, my dad and my little brother. So it's not just me deciding what's going to go into this property. The trail probably runs something like this, maybe comes down into here. And runs to the back of our property. Where my dad shot that big buck was back here. There's a lake back here that provides a water source. The whole middle, I guess I should probably turn this back on. The whole middle of this property is basically just a giant swamp. And then our neighbors to the west of us here, they own like 140 acres, and they've just planted pines upon pines, man. So this whole area back here at the back of the property, as you can see by these rows, is just pine trees. So we see a lot of deer transitioning out of this swamp area and into these pines, and our neighbors know it. These neighbors know it, and everybody tries to hunt this back corner and overload it. Makes for fun rifle season opening day because everybody's popping off, but really makes it difficult to shoot the bucks that I know are there. I know there's world-class deer here. My neighbor shoots them. It's just a little bit different hunting situation. I don't have the cameras on this property that I want. I don't have the food plot set up, but I do hunt this property like I would almost hunt public. I try to never sit the same spot twice. I try to go in with a climber or sticks and a platform and just hunt a bunch of different trees. The other people who are hunting this property with me do not do that. But we still see good deer here. Yeah, this is a really great piece just because of where it is, and there's not a lot. If you zoom out here, you'll notice that this transition zone, to the back of what eventually opens up into just huge ag lands is R40. It's like that's the stopping point. What I would like to see on here is more food sources. I guess you can kind of see our trail right there. Is more food sources. We got plenty of cover. We have I had this argument with a discussion with my dad about this, just saying I would like to see deer kind of winter on our property. Let's put in food sources for that. And he's like, I don't know if I want to see that. I don't want to see them degrade the food sources for the spring. And we kind of butted heads about that when those are going to be two different groups of food, in my opinion. But we're growing as a group and learning, which is good. It's nice to be able to do that together.
For sure.
This piece is very dynamic. There's a lot in there. There's a lot of oaks, a lot of mature hardwoods, not so many pines, not so many cedars, anything like that. There's a small section of cedars kind of right in here that kind of falls into a cedar swamp that's kind of this area. But it's all just like older dead cedars and saplings. So our plan is someday to do a select cut on this, which will eventually change the topography kind of and how this land moves. But I'm kind of excited for that day because that's going to completely change the dynamics of the land. So
All right. Let's dive into this a little bit. So, let's talk about cover first. So the properties to your south and your west are large ag fields, correct? Grass fields.
grass fields, yeah, it's like CRP land pretty much.
Okay. Okay. So they could or maybe not bedding depending on pressure. You
Right.
have all the timber for the most part in that whole northeast corner there. Like they have to be on your property or go through your property. So
Right.
what does your understory look like of your timber in there? Like it looks like a lot of mature timber, like you had mentioned. Do you have any understory?
There is because this whole center area kind of is like a low swamp. So you got old timber that's either dying or has died in there, and most of it is young growth.
Okay. Do you know what species are in there?
I don't. I'm a little less familiar with this. That's something I definitely need to brush up on. Probably this whole blue area, I would say, is a swamp.
Okay. So, um, my first recommendation would be going in there, identifying what your understory is. Um,
Okay.
Figure out what the species is, and then when they're going to be dropping their leaves, because they'll move throughout that swamp, especially in Michigan. Michigan's got to be similar to PA. They'll move in that swamp as the leaves change and as they drop.
Yep.
I hunt a piece that's actually very, very similar to this. It's a little bit more ridgy, but they're in the swamp in the early season, and then as soon as those leaves die, they're out of there. They're up on the ridges.
Yep.
But
Yeah, we're flatlanders in Michigan, man. What we consider a hill, you guys would consider a mound. So yeah.
that's what I was just going to say is it looks a little flat out there. So let's talk about. Uh, is there anywhere in there that has a whole bunch of cattails or anything like that?
Not really. Well, there's a little band, I would say, probably maybe at the corner of this triangle. There's a little band where it kind of comes into a ravine, and you get a little bit of a swampy cattaily area, but it really depends on the spring. If we have a wet spring, that'll be a swampy cattaily area. If we have a dry spring, then that'll just look like a regular forest floor. It's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Drains well with this lake being back here.
That would be an interesting thing to set up a camera around and see what's going on back there. How has it? Have you been up there at all this spring yet?
Yep.
/ summer.
That's where I took my turkey from this year. This is the best turkey hunting property I've ever owned in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ravine back here where the turkeys roost, and then they fly off that ravine and basically just come into our property.
Nice.
I'm pretty successful back there. My brother has as well, but that's probably the last time I was up there. That would have been May. So before this, actually, that would have been mid quarantine, I think. But not Granholm. Whitmer said it was okay. So
is that going to get cattails this fall? Is it going to have cattails?
I would not expect that to have cattails. So this all kind of it's all kind of like a ridge where there used to be a road back here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's like where like a road. It kind of depresses the land, which is our back property line,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just all kind of starts to fall into this swampy area. And that's where you got a lot of your big oaks and stuff up in here, and then it gets thicker as it falls down, kind of into that. So I would say the biggest chance of cattails is going to be at the back of this food plot and up into this swamp.
Well, I would definitely get some type of reconnaissance around those cattails. I don't know how skittish the deer are in your area, as far as if you're in there checking cameras all the time or whatnot. However you're going to go about it if they will or will not tolerate that pressure. How much pressure does this piece usually get?
Not much. Just four wheelers and tractors, which they're pretty used to. My dad will drive a four wheeler to the back every now and then. He pretty much lives out there now. So they're kind of used to that stuff. It's the foot traffic that kind of seems to push the deer more.
That's what I was just going to say. I was going to say if you can get a camera in there near that bedding area, and it may not. Yeah, get a camera in near that bedding area and just drive in with your four wheeler, pull the card, and get out of there.
Yeah,
I don't think it'll really make a difference. I mean, especially if they're somewhat used to that kind of traffic. What does the mature canopy look like as far as tree species?
So we got a lot of like rough bark hickory. We got a lot of oak. There's some black walnut in there as well, which is nice. Got a lot of maples, things like that. It's a pretty diverse woods as far as I believe the word is deciduous trees, but it does not have a lot of coniferous, trees. So it's good in that respect. We have had an arborist come out and just look at the land just to see if it's at carrying capacity to be select log, and they've recommended about 10 more years of growth before we do that. So we're kind of in that, midlife
range
area with a lot of those trees. A lot of acorns on this property, probably more acorns than I've ever seen on most properties that I've hunted.
All right. So that's going to be an issue then. So food is not a limiting factor.
Right. But they mow down that food plot. So it's almost like they're missing those greens, but they have a mass, So
that's what I was just going to say. So I was going to transition over to the food plot. What do you guys plant in that food plot?
So they'll just do a mixed bag of everything, man. It's whatever our mill has on sale kind of thing, Hey, we have a 300-acre farm over near southern Detroit, south of Detroit, Monroe. That's where if we have old seed bags of soybeans, we'll plant that down in there. It changes year to year. I try to push them more towards brassicas, clovers. If we can get some radishes to grow down in there, that kind of a thing, which is what we planted this year. So
I would, it looks like it's big enough. I would be interested to see you guys run a trial where you do clover, brassicas, and some type of grass, like a Timothy or something like that, or maybe even another legume, like if you wanted to do beans or something like that, as well as the clover. But I'd be really interested to see how Timothy grass does in there compared to brassicas, compared to clover, and what they concentrate on more. And if you find out that they are selecting a certain type of green over another, you could plant that whole thing with that, and it'd be an absolute game changer.
That's a good idea. I should definitely do some test plots back in there. I've been trying to kind of do test plots back up on this hill because that's kind of my little area where I've been hunting these last couple of years. And I've gotten good clovers and grasses to grow in there, and they're just mowed down. And when I say test plot, I mean just a small, 10 by 10, nothing crazy. But they get mowed down. So I need to almost like make an Excel spreadsheet and say, hey, this is what happened with this one, and track data a little more.
Do you put up like little deer fences? It's like maybe like a foot by foot, just to measure the growth of what it would normally be without deer browse compared to what it is with deer browse?
So I use like old rabbit cages, but same thing. I'll take an old rabbit cage upside down and set it on there and then let it grow. But
So what are you seeing, like stuff like that?
So on that one, on like my 10 by 10 plot, I did not do a test cage. On that, they mowed everything down. I need to set up test cages up there. Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I need to set up test cages up there and do some test rabbit cages, but I don't know if I'm even going to be able to get plots on that this year.
Yeah.
With the way everything's going, but hopefully I will. I'll be able to get some late summer plots for the early fall. But I need to do a test plot. I need to do a test in there. In my opinion, everything's getting mowed down so fast. I mean, there's not enough graze in there, especially with this open field back here. There's no food sources in there that them deer want. They're not grazing in that field. It's just like switchgrass. So yeah, but
what is it like during the rut up there?
oh, it's amazing, man. I can't even describe it. It's my absolute favorite place to hunt in the entire world, man. You never know what you're going to see. There's moments where you're in the woods, and I took a 7 point last year out there with my bow. My first sit there in the morning, I had an 8 point come through. Nice eight. I mean, bucks chasing does. It's like what you'd almost kind of imagine in a hunting show some days, and then other days you're like, "Where's the deer, man?" It's interesting, but I think a part of that is having thick cover on our property. Once that pressure goes up, those deer just become smarter and they stop using a lot of those areas, which I mean makes sense. But the rut is good, but once the pressure ticks up, you just got to hunt early season, man, down there. You just got to.
Yeah. All right. So that trail that you drew on there, that is your main access for the entire piece, right?
Pretty much, yeah. It's like a 2-track basically.
Okay. So how do you access the basically below that line with any type of north, northeast, northwest wind? Because as you're walking in, if you're walking from the right to the left and you have a northeast, north, or northwest wind, your scent is carrying through all of that timber.
Yep. So that is a struggle. That is one big struggle with this piece is playing the wind. I have to admit, I'm not as smart as playing the wind with this. With this piece, I really try to just focus on scent control, scent cover, and just absolute stealth. The best part about this piece is that this trail is down in like a valley, and there's ridges on either side. So we can walk in on that valley with low wind and low scent dispersion.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you up out the other side of this, there's a big hill. You're on top of a ridge. So every piece of scent that you had brought up with you, it's gonna get blown down into that swamp.
Yeah.
I've hunted this piece where I've came up in here and blown every deer off the piece of property and then watched them filter back in. I've also hunted it where I've snuck past them all, got up in my stand, and watched them feed up out of this swamp. It just really depends on how close are they to that trail. And, dream scenario, we can buy this 40 acres to the north of us and have another entrance route. But unfortunately, right now, that's just kind of the way that the cards fall. I've never tried to sneak back in this way and get into that property because it's so thick that I kind of felt like it'd be more noise than it's worth. That might be worth investigating one of these days.
I would be really curious to see if you could cut in an access trail or something. It doesn't even have to be that big. Just like you go in with hand snippers just to open a little bit of a lane so that you can walk in there and access anywhere in that bottom left corner of that triangle, the swamp.
Yep.
And hunt that on a northwest wind, especially when the rest of the crew goes in that top lane.
See, man, now this is the kind of information I wanted out of this podcast. What's going to help me be more successful than my dad and brother?
Well, that will definitely probably get you going in the right direction. I'd be really curious to see that. And as far as where I think, because they're going to move in that swamp based on the wind direction where they're going to bed at. So if it's really close to a triangle, their bailout, their escape routes aren't going to be necessarily going back into the swamp. It's going to be going out into the open where they can escape from whatever predator is after them with speed. You know what I mean? So
okay, yeah, for sure, that makes sense.
if you're hunting, like if it's a northwest wind or any type of north wind, they're probably going to be in that south corner. And if you can get access in there through that south, dude, I mean, that seems like a slam dunk there. They come out that south corner.
Yeah, that's a great idea actually, and I'm getting married out there next year, and I'm trying to convince my dad to cut a trail back here so we can walk everybody around the property kind of a thing, but use it under the guise of getting married. Maybe I can sneak in a little.
There you go.
Sneak trail for myself. Yeah, that's a good idea actually. I'm gonna make notes of that.
As far as your trail that you currently have and just it is what it is. Being that it's a ridge, trying to get those thermals to work for you, because you have that big lake or a pond, whatever, in the northwest corner. Going in the mornings, making sure that it's plenty early in the morning, so that all your thermals are getting sucked down into that pond, and then making sure that you're out when that heats up, so that it's not blowing back into that bedding area. So you might need to get out at 9 o'clock.
That's another good point too. Because I've sat there all day and I've got a little stand on almost sitting right in that pond, and it's exactly what you said. That's exactly what happens. And then come noon, you're blowing deer out of this little low area because your scent's getting sucked down in there. So and that's a good idea. I might put that raises some thoughts for me. There's a big tree down here I could put a stand on, or you could just transition closer into that area. If you wanted to sit all day.
One of the other things you can try to do too is, if you can get in early enough and still be quiet enough to sneak into that top right corner, if you can get as close to the bedding as possible and then try to get as high as possible, so that when the thermals do switch, so that you can get a longer sit, if you want to get a longer sit, it blows out over that swamp. So let's say that you got a northwest wind and they're bedded in that corner. We're going to assume that they're bedding as close to that corner as possible. Well, if you can get up high enough, those thermals will carry your scent up and over them, and you'll be in the clear.
So, what's your opinion on height for that? Because I've heard a lot of different things, and my goal lately has been to get above 25 feet. What's your thoughts on that?
It's totally dependent upon the terrain.
Okay.
So it's not like X equals Y equals Z.
Right.
There's too many variables. So I would say if it's flat and that the thermals are just rolling up over that hill, you might only need to get 15, 20 feet high.
Okay.
If it is real steep, I mean, you can get even less than that. But if you got a little bit of an incline in that, like, let's say it's a ridge and then there's an incline and then it rolls, like your thermals would roll over that hill into the swamp. Yep. That's when you might need to get 25 feet, 30 feet high.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yep.
So you really got to judge it on your terrain in there. And everybody pretty much knows about this now, the whole milkweed thing. Taking milkweed out there, seeing what it does, and being able to watch it go with like 100 yards, what your scent's doing 100 yards away from you.
Yeah, that was a pretty rich technique that I employed when I started hunting down here, moving from Michigan to Southern Ohio. The hills down here, you hunt a lot of ridges and ravines and drainages down here, and I didn't realize how much my scent was traveling, and watched one of your guys' podcasts, and you kind of enlightened me to that. And it is amazing how your scent will travel all the way down a ravine. The next thing you know, your scent's out, 500 yards away from you. Mm-hmm. And, it's not even the way that the wind's blowing. It's crazy, but yeah.
Yep. It can definitely be overlooked. And if you're just using the powder, the baby powder puffers, like you don't really know what it's doing.
Yeah, it dissipates too fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm running low on battery. 1 second. I'm going to grab my charger.
Sure.
1 second. Sorry, George.
No, that's fine. That gives me a chance to look over some of my other notes here.
Fight over chargers in this household is constant, man.
Dude, it's everywhere, man. It's everywhere. I wanted to ask you about limiting factors as far as, and you may or may not know about what is on this property as far as limiting factors. But I want you to just try to think about it, and then next time you go up there, to analyze it this way. But look at your bedding areas, okay? Like your swamp, right?
Yep.
Normally, most bedding areas just have cover. So the limiting factor is going to potentially be food or water or whatever. You're obviously in a swamp, so it's not water, so it's going to be food. So look for a location in that bedding area that might have 3 giant oak trees that are dropping acorns, and see where it's at, see if you can get access to it, and then see how you can hunt that based on the wind direction. The same thing for your other property too. Limiting factors, but you just got to make it a lot smaller. So in that like oak flat on that other property where you had the creek drainage, it might be a little open section of cover, or it might be a little thicker in one section for cover.
Right.
That you'll want to focus on. So can you think of any places that are like this on this piece?
There's 2 that come to mind where you have a really nice, either an old oak or like an old hickory in there, and it's just surrounded by young swampy growth. That's kind of when you had mentioned moving, once those thermals start to switch in the morning, that's kind of a spot that came to mind. There's a big tree that rises up out of that swamp. I want to say it's northwest of where that top corner is of that triangle. And it would be a great little spot to just kind of set up on and I always shed hunt there because it's a high traffic area. And the deer dip down in by that big tree and go back up another side. And I always expect antlers to get knocked off in there, kind of a thing. So that's an area that as soon as you had mentioned switching positions, I was like, I got to get a tree stand up in there. So that's the first area that kind of comes to mind with that, definitely. And then there's other areas along the swamp where that trail, we plant that all to food plot as well, just clovers and stuff. There's a couple spots off of there where I'm thinking of, there's big trees, but I almost just don't want to sit in them because you have a nice big tree, but then you're a sore thumb sticking out of that nice big oak, We got to kind of watch that as well.
For sure.
Yeah, my dogs are going to go nuts. UPS man's here.
That's all right. That's pretty much it. I mean, we covered entry, exit. We covered stand locations. We covered wind. Topography, there's a little bit of topography there, but for the most part, it's drainages. It's not like ridges and stuff like that. It's relatively flat. We covered food. We covered cover. You're not lacking does, right? So
no,
reproduction is pretty much not going to be a factor. You said you had great rut activity there, and they're either chasing or potentially they're in lockdown when you're not seeing them during the rut. So that could that's just part of the game.
Yeah, in my opinion, we need to take more does off of this property. But again, that can be a discussion for another podcast.
Yeah, that can be quite the debate sometimes with people.
Oh yeah.
Did you have any specific questions that you maybe wanted to ask me?
I don't think so. This has been great, actually. This has helped me to not only confirm a couple things about my small piece that I have here, that I'm moving in the right directions, give me a couple of ideas for some soft mass, which I like. I'm going to definitely probably investigate some other things on this small piece just to have I don't know. You kind of spurred some thought for me. So I may be texting you in the next couple of days to get your opinion on a couple of things.
Absolutely.
But you kind of made me rethink the way to hunt this 40 up in Michigan. We kind of almost hit it from this trail all the time, and now I'm thinking, what can be our other plans of attacks? And yeah, you just kind of got my juices flowing, man, which is good. I mean, it's stuff that I haven't thought about before. So
And
yeah,
the craziest thing about that, man, is with the way that the entry is set up. Now, some of these deer, they may let you walk right by them, but the fact is that there's probably a good chance that they know you're there. So they're going to wait till the cover of darkness to come out. What aren't you potentially seeing on that property because of that? You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely.
And like, what kind of quality of deer is on that property because of that you're just not seeing?
Yeah, 100%, man. And I mean, we have trail camera photos of deer sometimes that I'm like, I cut off my right arm to get those deer, and you just don't see them because exactly that, man. They either know we're there and they're hunkering down, or we're blowing them out the backside of that big CRP land when we walk into the back. And it's a constant frustration of mine, and I'm sure a lot of folks have that frustration when they're hunting property with other people who disagree on how you want to manage that. And it's not always a bad thing, right? I mean, sometimes letting somebody else manage the property will free up time for you to do other things, focus on gear, focus on getting that bow sighted in. I'm really the only one that kind of heavily archery hunts this property, so that's a big win for me.
Yeah,
being able to do that. Yeah, that's what I love about the whole Cervicide thing, man, is just having a sounding board where I may get shut down in my own small world, but now I can take this out to 2,000 other people that are going to say, yeah, that's a good idea, or no, man, don't do that. So yeah, it's just all around value for that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's the groups, like, you can ask whatever question you want, and it doesn't matter what skill level you're at either. Like,
Yep.
You're not going to get bashed for it. You're not going to get made fun of. Like, we've all been in various levels of skill and experience. So you got to start somewhere. But
Absolutely, man, absolutely. I asked a question about a deer blind window size the other day, and I got like more information than I needed. So I mean, just yeah, having that's priceless. But no, this is great, man. I really appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you taking a look at this and kind of break this down with me.
not a problem, man. Not a problem. We'll get this posted up here on YouTube and on all our other media outlets. I'm going to see if I can pull some of the audio out and see how that sounds, of just potentially maybe doing the audio. But I'm glad that you're looking at it from a different perspective and critically thinking about your pieces that you got here.
Yeah, I'll definitely say that's one thing that having this group has helped me do, is just think about hunting different. Especially, I mean, I could almost probably say I about owe this buck to Cervicide, because I would have overhunted the heck out of that stand before, I listened to you guys. And I mean, of course, you're not my only source of information. Everybody listens to the Meat Eater and the Hunting Collective and all those guys.
Yep.
That's what kind of makes Cervicide great for me, is you have these photos, these folks out there that are doing these things, and then you hear not only those strategies or those tactics echoed, you hear them almost kind of like tweaked to work better for your Michigans, your West Virginia, your Southern Ohio. Just crazy, because there's so many different regions, so many different type of hunting that you can do. It's blown me away, just the differences between Michigan and Ohio. So,
yeah, absolutely, man. All right, well, I'm gonna bounce. I gotta get running on to the next project here.
absolutely.
I appreciate you getting on. If you ever have any questions, man, just shoot me a text. The line's always open.
Absolutely, dude. You'll be hearing from me about that bow and some hunting stuff.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
I appreciate it, Torrin.
Yep.